Welcome to this webinar where I'm going to go over your 2020 e-commerce PPC strategy. It's vital at this time of year. We've just, well, hopefully most of you will have been through the rush of Christmas and all that wonderful sales revenue that hopefully you will have generated at Christmas, and it's time to kind of reevaluate and plan your strategy for 2020. Lots of things are changing. You need to make sure that you're ready. You need to know where you're going. So that's what we're going to do in today's video, is going to go through all of that with you. Okay. Right, let's get started. So what we'll cover, just to briefly go over the agenda, we're going to look at sort of setting your goals for 2020, looking at what you want to achieve in the coming year, and how you're going to measure that, what you need to be measuring in order to know whether or not you're hitting your goals for the year. We're going to look at, and we're going to move into the more sort of tactical stuff. We're going to look at how to optimize your product feed to get the most out of your campaigns, then how we're going to structure. We're going to look at campaign structure for shopping campaigns. This is quite an advanced campaign structure I'll be talking about, but it really will help you get the best results. And then we're going to talk about leveraging dynamic search ads or DSA campaigns, then moving into looking at your search campaigns, and then the power of remarketing, and finally, optimizing for best performance. So we're going to look at what you need to do on a regular basis to make sure that everything is performing as well as. So, setting goals. What I would like you to do at this time of year now is to decide where you want to be at the end of 2020. What's it going to look like for you? What in an ideal world is 2020 going to achieve for your business? So maybe you might have a target for sales revenue. Maybe you want to increase that by a set percentage, by 10%, by 20%. Maybe you have a set figure in mind to hit in revenue during 2020 or by the end of 2020. But then you also need to know, well, you know, how many orders does that equate to? Because obviously some companies are going to have an average order value of maybe 20 or 30 pounds. Others might have an average order value of 100 pounds. So you need to know what, in order to hit your revenue target of, just numbers out of my head, of £1 million, if your average order value is £100, that's 10,000 orders. You need to know those numbers. Will you, do you want to look at conversion rates? A slight increase in the conversion rate on a website can make a massive difference. If you're getting 100 orders a month and you increase your conversion rate by 10%, then that's 110 orders a month. So do you have a target to get your conversion rate to at the end of the year? Just want you to think about these things and think about what's meaningful to you, what's meaningful, what's logical for your business, and also to some extent what's achievable. Now they do say, obviously you need to have goals that are kind of beyond reach, but they shouldn't be pie in the sky and totally unachievable. They need to be realistic. And you need to think about that so that you know where you're heading. The reason being, you need to know what your ad campaigns need to achieve. You need to kind of have those figures in mind. And so in order to, once you've decided what you want to achieve, then you need to decide exactly what numbers you need to track to know whether you're on target to achieve that. So, if you have a revenue target, then you need to be tracking your revenue on a weekly and monthly basis so that you know where you're going. You also, I would imagine, when it comes to advertising, it's very important to know what your return on ad spend is, how profitable your campaign. So you'll need to track your cost. Again, talking about conversion rates, you know, think what again, what is something that might be meaningful to your goals that you might need to track. You might want to track how many visitors you get to your website, or how many, what your email open rate is, what your click-through rate is. You know, all these things are going to affect the figures and the goals that you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to increase your revenue, whether that's through email marketing or from Google Ads, then possibly, you know, you need to consider what aspects of all of these individual elements you need to track in order to know what's valuable and whether you're getting where you want to go. The only caveat I would say here is you have to be careful not to end up sort of overwhelming yourself with numbers. You do not want to be tracking 20, 30 different numbers. You want to distill it down to the fewest numbers that are meaningful to you and your business. So you can focus on those particular things, and you know what gets tracked and measured gets done and gets improved. So that's what you need to think about here. So when we're talking about tracking your KPIs or key performance indicators, that's, you know, that what takes us straight into this. So do you have tracking conversions and conversion rates? You have to have the tracking in place. Do you have conversion tracking set up? Do you have it set up properly? A lot of websites will have conversion tracking, or think they have conversion tracking, but they're either tracking the wrong things or it's not tracking properly. So make sure that you have that conversion tracking in place, and that it is, one, tracking what you need it to track, and two, that it is tracking correctly. You need to make sure that you know, do you have e-commerce analytics? Hopefully you have analytics on your website, but you need to make sure that the e-commerce element of Google Analytics is enabled and again is working properly. And do you have somewhere where all of this information is available to you at a glance? You don't want to have to be logging into 6 different systems to check for 6 different numbers. You want to have one dashboard where you can go and see those important numbers, even if that is just a chart on the wall or a whiteboard on the wall where you put your numbers at the end of every month or the end of every week. You need one place where everything is there and you can see exactly where you are. This is an example of, and this is an example of a reporting dashboard that we use for a Google Ads account, which gives us all the information that we need to decide whether or not things are working. You know, so we've got the obvious, the cost, the number of revenue, and the ROI. We've got some other metrics here from within the campaign. This is just a very straightforward dashboard that you can build in Google Data Studio. Data Studio is free. You just have to link your Google Ads account and your analytics account, and then you can just pull the data in from both of those and many other, you know, Facebook and all sorts of places, depending on what you're doing. And then you can build these dashboards, which will give you live data, which will compare, if you want it to, as you can see here, the green and red arrows at the bottom, that compares it to the previous months, tells you whether it's improved or not. But it's one place you can go at any point in time and keep a track and see where you're at compared with your targets. So that's talking about your goals, where you want to get to, and how to measure that. And before I talk, before I talk about sort of getting into campaigns and what you need to be doing, for e-commerce businesses, probably one of the most important and one of the most impactful things you can do is to look at your product feed and to see how you can optimize it to get the most from it. But the what I want to get across is, obviously for shopping campaigns, you don't use keywords. You don't tell Google, I want to show an ad for this keyword and that keyword. You just give Google your product information, and they look at the contents of that product feed. They look at the titles and the descriptions, and then Google decides whether or not your product is relevant for a search that somebody has just entered into Google. So it is vitally important that you think about the information that is in that product data, so that you can make sure that you're telling Google to the best of your ability exactly what you want to show up for and what kind of searches your product is relevant for. Taking a step back from just the relevancy of your product data, you also need to think about the quality of your product data, because having errors and warnings and alerts in Merchant Center is going to affect how well your products perform in your shopping campaigns. So this is just a really quick kind of overview of the things that you need to think about and the things you need to look at. So you need to look at your item IDs. Are they unique and consistent? Your product manufacturer's product numbers. So have they been modified? Do your MPNs match what the other retailers have if you're selling sort of branded goods? Are your prices accurate? Your price in your feed must match the price on the website. If that changes a lot, how often are you syncing those together? Because if Google sees different prices in the feed and on the website, it throws up an error and you can cause all sorts of issues. Do you have products which have no price at all? You need to make sure that you're on top of all of that and have those kind of products excluded from the feed. Do all your links work? Do you have redirects and 404 errors that can cause, a 404 error obviously is you don't want to pay for somebody to click on an advert for them to just land on an error page. And then stock status. Do you have products that go in and out of stock sort of quite often? And if so, how do you handle that? Again, it's just to do with how often you sync your Merchant Center information with your website. If you are tracking live stock on your website, or are you doing it somewhere else? You do not want to be advertising products in Google Shopping. He clicks on it, they arrive at your website and it's out of stock and they can't buy it anyway. Do you have product variations? Okay, do you have, are you sending all the product variations? Do you have that t-shirt in red, pink, blue and black? Or are you only sending one? Sometimes you might want to only send one, but that's a strategic decision that you need to make as to whether you want to send every single version of your product. Oh, it's saying my my microphone's not working, so let's have a look. That looks okay. All right. Sounds good to me. Okay, so I shall carry on. So yeah, and when we're talking product variations, when you have all the different product options on your feed and somebody clicks on the pink t-shirt size 8, are they landing on the product option page that is for the pink t-shirt size 8, or are they landing on the blue one size 12? In which case they're not going to be happy and off they'll go. Shipping and tax data. You need to make sure that's set up accurately, either in the feed or in Merchant Center itself. Now GTINs, the barcode numbers, you will get a lot of errors for barcodes if you don't have them or if they're incorrect. So you need to make sure that you have barcodes if they're available, and if they're not available for your products, if your products don't have barcodes, then you need to make sure you set your product feed to tell Google that that's the case, so they don't throw up a label, throw up an error. Custom labels, are you using custom labels? You know, you can use custom labels for all sorts of things to help organize your feed and to help structure your shopping campaigns. You know, you need to think about, you know, are you using those to their best advantage? And do you have all the information that is available to you? You need to give Google as much information as possible about your products as you can. And so you need to make sure that, you know, if there is a column for material or color or size, that if you have that information, it's relevant for your products, that you have those fields populated. Here, okay. So that's the basic sort of quality element of your product feed, to make sure the quality of the data in there is okay. The next step is to optimize your product feed and to, as I mentioned before, to think about the relevancy of the information so that you will show up for the right types of searches that are being made. Now, the most important part is the product title. So are they relevant? Do they include the right types of keywords? Are they structured properly? Now, there's a blog post on my website where I discuss this, and there's a video where I discuss this in much more details, how to structure your product titles, or the best way to structure your product titles for Google Shopping. And that link there, that bit.ly link, will take you to that blog post and that video so that you can have a look and get more information about that. Definitely worth a read. When it comes to your product titles, you have two choices. When you want to update your product titles to include keywords, you can obviously just update the product title on your website. Sometimes that's not practical. You might end up with a product title that is just too long. If you want to include everything, it doesn't fit on your website or doesn't look very good on your website. So in that case, you might want to consider using a product feed management platform where you can actually dynamically edit your product titles before submitting them to Merchant Center. Again, I mentioned that in that video with from that bit.ly link. I think I discussed that a little bit as well in that video. Product descriptions. Again, you need to make sure they are good product descriptions, have lots of descriptive text, you're including keywords, you actually, include a lot of information that's relevant, and that ad gives Google as much detail as possible as to what that product is about. Product images are one of the, when you think about it on a Google Shopping ad, what is the only thing that somebody really sees? It is your image. And then the price will be underneath, and you'll get the first, I think it's 20 characters of the product name. But the main thing they're going to be looking at is the image. So if you have poor quality images, low resolution, poor backgrounds or whatever, then you need to think about updating those and making sure that you have a nice clear white background, that you don't have any sort of logos or text or anything over them, because those will be disapproved by Google. Have a search for your products and look and see how yours stand out compared with your competitors. And the one thing I would say with product images is a lot of people would go, oh, I've got 5,000 products on my website. I can't possibly take images of 5,000 products. It's just too cool. Take your best-selling, top 10 best-selling products to start with, and redo those product images just to start. And then once you've done those 10, take the next 10 best-selling and redo those product images, and just work your way. You've probably got 4,700 of those 5,000 products, probably hardly ever light of day. Just focus on the ones that we get and to try and make an improvement to those. Another big area where a lot of people miss out on when it comes to optimizing a product feed is your product type. So this is a field not to be sort of confused with Google's product category. These are product types, are something that you can define. So I'm just looking at a tin here. Panda bear cookies. I know that's really random, but there is a tin here which has some panda bear cookies. You can set a product type of panda cookies. Okay, so really, really valuable place to include your keywords. You know, try not to get carried away. Think of the most common way that somebody will search for something that has kind of a really good search volume. Don't be too specific, but use your product types to help Google to know what you're relevant for and what you want to show up for. Make sure you're using them, because you don't have to use a product type. So a lot of people don't. But get your keywords in those product types and make sure they're filled out for as many of your products as possible. So what we've covered so far is looking at your thinking about setting your goals and your targets for 2020. Where do you want to end up by the end of the year? You will have set up your dashboard, hopefully in Data Studio, where you can track all the elements and the KPIs that you need to track in order to know whether or not you are heading in the right direction to get to your goal. And we've looked at how best to optimize your product feed to make sure that your product data is as good as it can be to get the best results from your Google ads. So next, I'm going to go in and talk about your shopping campaigns. Now, I am going to go into quite a sort of a high level strategy here. And I will do another webinar only on this topic to go into a lot more detail. But when it comes to shopping, what a lot of people do, and the mistake they make, is they'll build one shopping campaign with everything in the one shopping campaign. They'll have one ad group and they'll have all their products in one ad group, and then they stick a bid on that ad group and then that's it. And it is there's no control. There's very little control, you know, or there is no control about bidding for different keywords, like you would in search. You know what the valuable keywords are, so you'll bid more on those than you would on the not so valuable keywords. What this LMH, which stands for low, medium, high strategy, does is it allows you to build multiple campaigns, making use of something called campaign priority, which surprisingly enough can be low, medium, or high, and negative keyword lists. So in Google Ads, in shopping, this doesn't apply to search, it only applies to shopping. You have different campaign priorities, so that if you have two different campaigns with the same products in those campaigns, you can say to Google, this campaign is low priority, this campaign is high priority. If somebody searches for a product and either of these two are eligible to show, I want you to show the product in the high priority campaign, not the low priority campaign. So what we can do, just try and sort of explain this as briefly as possible. What we're able to do by using negative keywords as well is control which campaign or the products from which campaign are shown for particular searches. For example, if I am selling, I always end up using trainers, running shoes as an example, because it's just easy. So if I sell A6, I don't know the brand name, A6 gel Nimbus running shoes, okay? If somebody just searches for running shoes, that's quite general, it's quite broad, it's quite generic. Meh. I might want to pay a little bit to show up an ad, but it's not very, they're not very sort of a long way down the buying funnel, so they're probably not going to buy very, not likely to buy. They're just researching. So I want to show an ad, but I don't really want to pay too much for the click. If they get to searching for Nike running shoes or ASICS running shoes, and I sell that brand, and I think, oh, okay, then they're a little bit more valuable to me. I do want to show that, and I'd be willing to pay a little bit more to show them that ad than I would for just a generic running shoes. And another search, and in another search, somebody might search for ASICS gel Nimbus running shoes, size 8, ladies, 5 ladies. Now that is a very, very valuable search term because they know what they want. If I have that product in stock, I definitely want to show them my ad, and I will be willing to pay more to show them that ad than I would for any of the other 2 searches. So when you've got one shopping campaign, you'd pay the same amount for any of those searches to show your ad. What this system does, by using different campaigns, so you'd have 3 different campaigns, what you can do by setting the priority and then adding negative keywords, you can tell Google, right, if somebody searches for just running shoes, I want you to show the ad from this campaign where my bids are really low. If somebody searches for ASICS running shoes, I want you to show the product ad from this campaign where my bids are a little bit higher. And if somebody searches for ASICS gel Nimbus running shoes ladies size 5, I want you to show the product ad from this campaign where my bid is really high because I think I can, I can get that order. So by using these campaign priorities and negative keyword lists. Now the negative keyword lists, one of the lists in this example, one of the lists would have all the brand names in it. And then one list, you'd have one list with all the sort of the product specific. So you'd have ASICS gel Nimbus as a negative in another product, in another negative list. And by adding these negative lists to specific campaigns in a specific order, you can control how these search terms trigger your ads. So in this table here, we have got our 3 campaigns. So the one at the bottom here, we've got generic searches. So that's, I just want to show up for generic searches. Okay. My priority will be high, but my bid will be low. All right. But the negative keyword lists are added to this campaign. So this will never show up for anything with a brand, any search with a brand in it, or any search which includes a product specific, sort of a product title, i.e. gel Nimbus, ASICS gel Nimbus. The middle campaign here, which is the one I want to show if somebody actually uses a brand, a specific brand, that will have a medium priority, it will have a high bid, and it will only show up if the search includes the brand. So the negative list that I have added to this one is the negative list with all the specific products. So then those very specific searches. The topmost campaign here would be the product-based search campaign, which has a low priority, and this one has the highest bid, and it will only show up for those specific product searches. So the gel Nimbus, gel ASICS gel Nimbus, okay? So there are no negative keyword lists on this one. And the reason that this doesn't show up, because it's got no negatives, nothing stopping it. The reason it doesn't show up if somebody searches for a generic running shoe is because this has the lowest campaign priority. So when Google looks here and goes, somebody's searching for running shoes. And what I'm saying here is this is the high priority campaign here. Okay. It hasn't got, it's not hasn't got a negative that blocks the search. So this is the one I want you to show. This is the one I want you to show for that term. And it's got a really low bid. Okay. When somebody searches for an A6 running shoe, Google will come along here and it will say, okay, this is the high priority and we want to show this one first. And then it looks and goes, oh, but that's got an A6 as a negative, so I can't show this one. So it goes to the next highest priority one, which is this one. It says, oh no, we haven't got a negative on this campaign. It's got a higher bid. I'm going to show for this one. When somebody searches for A6 gel Nimbus running shoe, ladies size 5, Google comes along, it comes along and says, oh, this is the high priority. This is the priority campaign. Oh, but that term has been blocked by a negative list over here. Let's go to the next one. That's the medium. Oh, but that's been blocked as well. That's got a negative list. So, oh, we have to go to the low priority, which has the highest bid, no negative keyword list, no negative is blocking it. So that's where it can show the ad. I hope that makes sense, but it means we can control and we can pay more for more valuable searches that are more likely to convert than for just a general kind of broad researchy type search. There are a couple of other ways you can do this. If you don't have the kind of products where people will specifically search for the product, it's like if you're selling iPhones or something, you know, somebody will search for an iPhone X, whatever the specification is. But a lot of products, some products you don't kind of have that. So it will, you know, it makes it harder. You can't really pinpoint what people are searching for. So another way you can do it is to have your generic searches again. And then you can have branded, if brands are relevant, you can have the branded searches. But then instead of having a product-based search, you have your top converting searches. So what this does is it looks at these two campaigns here, and it says, what are the most common, you know, what are the top converting search terms from my shopping campaigns? And so I know that those are the most valuable, they're the most likely to convert. So I use those as my negative keywords, and I have a negative list which contains my top converting keyword phrases. Okay. So that's how that works. If you don't, sometimes you don't have enough volume to have these top converting searches, you can just do this with two levels and have maybe a generic search and a brand search. This could be generic search and your top converting searches if you don't sell sort of branded products that, or at least brands that people will necessarily recognize and search for. So there are different ways you can do this, but essentially it all does the same thing, and it allows you to bid more effectively on searches rather than just kind of show the same ad for any type of search and bid the same amount for any type of search. So that's the low, medium, high shopping campaign strategy. Few notes is when you come to adding your brand negatives, they should be broad match or phrase match, and you need to include sort of variations and misspellings because of the way that the system is changing. You need to kind of, you need to try and think of all the misspellings and things so that you're funneling everything through to the right campaign. The top converting negatives or the product negatives, both, or the top converting negatives should be exact match. So it's only that specific search term that you know converts. That's the one that you want to block so that it goes through to the top campaign. For product negatives, you want to include if model numbers and product, not just product titles, model numbers, serial numbers, if it's a kind of product like, I don't know, vacuum spares that somebody will search specifically for a model or a product or a serial number, you need to include those as negatives. And manufacturer part numbers, that's what I guess that's the same thing as a part number. So all of those need to be included in that negative list. And you must remember to update that negative list on a regular basis, especially if your product feed changes, if your product range changes a lot. Don't forget to update your negative lists. And when we have sort of scripts and tools that automate that process, but you do need to make sure that you do that on a regular basis. And the one thing I would say when you've set these campaigns up and before you launch them is to check your campaign priorities, and just have that kind of have this table where you can see generic searches, right? Okay, high, medium, low, and then make sure that you go in and check those campaign priorities, because if the campaign priorities are wrong, it's a waste of time. Another one that I've just realized that I haven't put on here is that you also need to use shared budgets. So those 3 or 2 or 3 campaigns, whichever way you're doing it, they need to share a budget, because if the budget runs out on one campaign, then it messes the whole thing up. So you need to have a shared budget so that all 3 campaigns, if one stops showing, they'll all stop showing. So that's another important note, to make sure that you use shared budgets for each of those, or for the group of campaigns. So shopping campaigns. The next thing you really need to be thinking about implementing is dynamic search ads. Now, I love dynamic search ads. Google will now encourage you to just enable dynamic search as part of a normal search campaign. I don't do that. I prefer to have more control, because what dynamic search ads do, essentially, they're kind of a bit like shopping ads, I suppose. They look at the content of your website, not just your product pages, but your whole website. And if somebody searches for something that they think is relevant to what's on your web page, they will show an ad and send them to that web page. So, well, you can see here where I've put on the cons side, you do have a lot less control over when your ads show, because you're not targeting with keywords, and which is why I like to have it as a completely separate campaign, so that I can see exactly what's happening with it, and it's not just getting confused. My keyword campaigns it's not confusing everything, and I don't know where the spend is going, whether it's going on the keywords or the dynamic targets. So separate campaigns for dynamic search ads, because they are amazing, especially if you've got a large e-commerce store. It's a great way of discovering new keywords. In fact, both positive and negative keywords, but predominantly for discovering keywords that potentially convert and get a lot of traffic for you. Keywords that you just would not have thought of necessarily. It gives you a very broad coverage for keywords, so you get to show up for a lot of different keywords that are relevant to what's on your website. And it's also a really good way of targeting those longer tail searches that, again, you could be from now till Christmas trying to figure out all the long tail searches, and most of which would be probably low search volume, wouldn't really get you any traffic. And so this is a really good way of covering all those bases, if you like. The bad side, as I've mentioned just now, you do have a lot less control over when your ads show. You don't have control over what the headlines of the ads is, because all you get to do is write the description lines. The headlines are automatically generated by Google at the time of the search. So, you know, who knows what they will show. You can see the information after the fact, but, you know, at the time of the ad showing, you don't have control over the headline. And you don't actually control, at the time of the ad auction, you don't have control over which landing page that ad is going to, because Google decides, oh, that's the relevant page, here's the ad, there's the landing page, away they go. So, but I think the pros outweigh the cons for these. The key is building them in the right way to sort of mitigate the potential problems of the sort of the bad side and the lack of control. If you build it the right way, then you get to take advantage of all the good stuff about DSAs. So to make sure that you get the best out of them, as I've already mentioned, I would have a specific campaign for DSA. Don't have it in with your normal search campaign. Have one campaign that is specifically DSA. I would recommend, I tend to target by categories, where it crawls the website, look sort of product categories, and you can target by product category. I try to have one target. So a target is a dynamic ad target. Think of it as, instead of a keyword, you have an ad target where you say, I want you to show ads for this category of pages. You can show an ad for this specific page. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. I tend to do it by category, just for e-commerce. That makes more sense. So I would have one target per ad group, or or a few very closely related targets per ad group, mainly because then you don't get to write much ad copy. As I said, you only get to write the description line. But it means you can be a little bit more specific, because your ads have to be a little bit generalized, because you don't specifically know what somebody's searching for. Whereas if you're targeting quite a narrow category of products, at least you can write a better ad for that. It's very important that you use negative targets, because Google will look at your whole website. So if you have a blog and it sees something on your blog that somebody's searching about, it will send them to a page on your blog. Well, unless you're, sometimes you want them to go to a page on your blog if it's a good page and they've got, I don't know, it's a product review or it leads to something else, but you need to be in control of when that happens. The point of these, as far as I'm concerned, is to get people to your product pages. So you need to make sure that you add negative targets for any blog posts, any terms and conditions pages. I mean, you don't want to show an ad going to your terms and conditions or your delivery charges or something like that, do you? You only want to send people to pages or product pages. So you need to make sure you use these negative targets to control that. Don't forget to use negative keywords, because you might not target with keywords, but you can make sure you don't show up for irrelevant terms or underperforming terms by making sure you add negative keywords to the campaign or to ad groups or whatever. And particularly for these, it is really important that you look at your search query data, I would say every day when you first launch one of these, to make sure that you're not showing up for random stuff that is just really not right. And then once it settles down, maybe weekly, even monthly, depends how much traffic you've got going through, but really important that you check that search query data on a very regular basis so that you can add negative keywords and more negative targets if you need to help control how you're spending it, how you're spending your money. But in my experience, these work really well. And again, you can use it, as I mentioned in the previous slide for keyword discovery, when you're looking at this search query data and you see a search term that you think, oh, that's had 10 conversions in the last sort of 2 months. Okay, now I can take that keyword and I can put it in a search campaign and write a really good ad for that search term, and then I can add it as a negative to my DSA, so I now have complete control over that keyword, the ad, where the landing page goes, and all of that stuff, good stuff. So that's your DSA campaigns. So once you've got your DSA campaigns going, obviously you need to be looking at search campaigns. I would always recommend starting with shopping campaigns. Search, it always works better than search for an e-commerce business. But search is also really, really valuable. You need to make sure that you've got it set up right. What you need to think about is having a brand campaign. Now, when I say brand campaigns, I'm talking about your brand. Depending on how big you are and how established you are, you might not get any traffic in a brand campaign, but it is important that you are bidding on keywords for your particular company name, because that stops somebody else from bidding on your company name and kind of poaching your traffic. You need to think about having sort of category-based campaigns. So talking about, let's talk about running shoes again, I guess. So you can have sort of, when I say category-based campaigns, you'd have one for, say, ladies running shoes, men's running shoes, children's trainers, tennis rackets, etc. Where you have kind of, those are more general searches, but they are specific category-based campaigns where you can put really good ad copy and all your ad extensions and that kind of thing can all be relevant for that particular search. And you want to think about having product-based campaigns. So that's then when we're getting down to the sort of the next level of granularity, where you would have, again, your A6 gel Nimbus running shoes, or your Wilson, I don't know the name of any tennis rackets, but, you know, Wilson XYZ Pro racket or whatever. And then, you know, you're getting a little bit more granular, and again, you have more control over the ad copy and the messaging for those product-based campaigns. And now this, when I say brands-based campaigns, this is where I would say you'd have, possibly, depending on the products, you might have a Nike campaign, an A6 campaign, a Wilson campaign. You wouldn't necessarily need this as well as category or product-based campaigns, but it depends on what you sell. Sometimes people will search for just the brand, more generic, and that's something that might be relevant for you. You also need to think about having competitor campaigns as well. So again, this is a moral dilemma for some people. And some brands, you're not allowed to bid on their brand name. Hoover is one that I know you can't bid on Hoover, or rather you can't put Hoover in an ad. You can bid on a Hoover keyword, but you can't put Hoover in an ad. So there are some restrictions like that, but if you have a competitor and they're a known brand, then I would recommend that you bid on their keywords. You probably don't want to use their name in your ad, because that's a little bit blatant and it could kind of, you know, you really don't want to hack them off. But you can bid on their brand name and show your ad, because you know if somebody's searching for them, they're searching for what you sell, so that you can show a relevant ad to them at the time. So there are lots of different search campaigns that you'll want to consider building. So at the very least, you want to have a brand campaign and then your category and product-based campaigns at a minimum, because those should probably do the best for you. Then think about you need to make sure that your ad extensions, we're on top of all your ad extensions. So site links, structured snippets, call outs, price extensions, you know, it's e-commerce. Hello, you need price extensions. You need the structured snippets. Promotion extensions. A lot of people know that you can add the, did I put a picture? No, I didn't. The promotion extensions are where in the shopping ads you can, it shows you a little text on the bottom of the image to say, you know, special offer or 5% off, £10 off, free shipping, whatever. Which you set those up either in the feed or in Google Merchant Center. But you can also have promotion extensions in search ads now as well. So it's a really good idea to think about how you can adapt and how you can use these, because it will improve your click-through rates. And to be honest, most people, it'll get them to click through, but they then forget to use the coupon when they get to checkout, because a lot of people, oh, well, I can't give away too much. Obviously, you know what you can afford to give away as a discount, but just remember that a lot of people probably won't remember to use the discount when they get there. So promotion extensions, and I put question mark next to call extensions. If you take a lot of orders over the phone, then you might want to consider having call extensions so that you can track those from paid traffic. Again, that's kind of a business decision for you. Ideally, you would track every type of conversion that comes through, whether that's a website order or a phone order. The problem is it does get a bit complicated to track revenue for a phone order. You have to have proper, you know, call tracking linked to a sort of CRM and pass that data back. But that is possible, and if it's, you know, if your business is of a size where that's needed, then I would highly recommend that you get that set up so that you can track everything properly. You need to then look at adding audiences to your search and shopping campaigns. Now, you can't add all of these to shopping campaigns, but you can add them to search campaigns. So what this does, it allows you to basically layer over these different audiences on top of your campaigns. And then when you've got some data through, it will allow you to adjust your bids based on the behavior of the audience. So, for example, an in-market audience. Google tells us that an in-market audience, they know if I am currently looking for a new pair of running shoes, they know. So I will be in an in-market audience for, I can't remember, I don't know all the audiences often, but just as an example for sort of sports equipment, say, for example. So I'm more likely to buy a pair of running shoes because they know I'm actively looking for a pair of running shoes. So over time, you might see that this audience that you've got layered over your campaign performs 20% better than all the other audiences do. So you can increase the bid on the people in that particular audience and improve your performance. So that's what these audiences enable you to do. It doesn't cost you anything to add them. So I would always recommend, if you do nothing else, just add the audiences. Add all the ones that you have available to you as observation only. And just let them sit and collect data. And at some time in the future, maybe you can come back and have a look and say, ooh, you know, look at these audiences, they do really well. But even if you don't plan on doing anything with it, add the audiences. You want remarketing audiences, similar audiences, affinity, custom intent, and in-market. And just get them added to your search campaigns. You can only add remarketing and similar audiences to shopping campaigns, but still, nevertheless, just do it because it will tell you which audiences perform best. And that will give you just that bit more information and that edge to help you make your campaigns work better for you. And talking of audiences, we need to obviously talk about remarketing. Because you need to have remarketing set up. Now, if you're a very small site and you don't get much traffic, then you know, you might not find that these do particularly well just because you don't have the volume of visitors. But as your site grows, it's definitely something that you need to be looking at. And what a lot of people do, the mistake a lot of people make, is they just have the kind of the default 30-day all visitors audience. Then they just build one campaign with one ad group for that 30-day audience, and then that's just it. What you need to do to really get the most out of this is to make the most of audiences. You can build audiences in Google Ads, and you can also build audiences in analytics. And the analytics audiences, you can do more with those because you can look at behavior, you can look at how many pages they viewed, how long they spent on the site, and all that kind of thing that can tell you more about that visitor and how likely they are to come back and buy from you. So that's, so you need to have obviously your Google Ads and Analytics accounts linked, which I hope you would have anyway. You know, these are examples of the multiple remarketing audiences that you need to have and to build campaigns based around these. So you'd have 3-day, 7-day, 14, 30, 90, 365-day audiences. If you sell flowers or you sell something at Christmas or something gift related, how awesome would it be to be able to say, okay, everybody that visited my site or bought from me or whatever, at this time last year, I'm going to show them another ad now, this time this year, so that I can remind them, hey, we're over here, you know, don't forget us, you came to us last year and we're still here. And then these are the kind of sort of more analytics-based audiences here, where you've got product viewers, cart abandoners, time on site. So again, you can build ad groups for, you know, one ad group for each of these. And the reason is that you can sort of change your messaging. So if somebody is a cart abandoner, you know that they've abandoned a cart, you might want to show them an ad with maybe a discount code, because they're more likely to come back and buy. If they are in your 365-day list, so they're from last year, then again, the messaging will be different. You know, you'll talk about the event or whatever is happening now, and it'll be more about a win back, you know, enticing them back type messaging than somebody who was just sort of on your website yesterday. Don't forget to run, you've got standard remarketing and dynamic remarketing. So dynamic remarketing shows people the actual products that they viewed, which I'm sure you've all been followed around by products, followed around the web by products that you've viewed. And then standard remarketing is where you just have your dynamic, your sort of responsive dynamic ad, your responsive display ad, and it's a static image and a static ad, and static ad text rather than product-based ad. But you need to have both of these types of ads campaigns set up. And with both of these, obviously consider, you know, changing the ad messaging depending on where somebody is in one of these audiences. Quick note on these, obviously you do need to, like I said, you get followed around by remarketing ads. You need to make sure you limit the number of times people see your ad, and you also need to exclude them if they have already bought from you, at least in the last 30 days, so that you don't annoy people and wind them up, because that's obviously not what the aim of this is. So you've got all your campaigns set up, and optimize. You need, you know, it's not a case of, you can't just set it and forget it. That is the biggest mistake you can make, is to just build your campaigns and think, oh, they're okay now, they're away they go. You have to be on top of it all the time. You have to be optimizing your bids. Now, I haven't gone into sort of smart bidding and automated bidding. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But you know, assuming that all of these are on sort of manual bidding, you need to be optimizing keyword bids, product group bids for your shopping. You need to be looking at device performance. You need to look at location performance. You know, if people in Scotland might be really, really good buyers and people in Devon are really, really unprofitable, you need to know that, and you need to be adjusting. You need to be adjusting based on ad schedules. It's very common that at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning you get a shed load of clicks and no purchases, so you might want to stop showing your ads, or at least pay considerably less at that time in the day than at the rest of the time of the day. You know, you need to look at all that stuff. Audiences, as I mentioned before, you need to look at that audience information and see if you can make bid adjustments to either increase your conversions or to reduce the cost for your conversions. But all of this stuff needs to be done on a regular basis. Okay, you need to be constantly mining the search term queries. You need to be looking for new keywords and search terms that are converting that you might want to add into separate ad groups, separate campaigns. You constantly need to be adding negative keywords, making sure that you're not showing relevant searches and wasting a load of clicks and money on terms that don't convert. You need to be testing your ads. You need to be constantly seeing which ads are performing best and rewriting. You need to check your budgets. If you've got, I mean, you might have a hard set budget, and that's fine. But it might, you know, if you've got, you know, 3 campaigns and one campaign is performing way better than the other 2, then you want to be moving the budget to that particular campaign if it's getting you a better ROI. But then obviously you need to look at campaigns and say, if it's profitable enough for you, can you afford, or you should, well, you should be increasing the budget on that. Because if you're putting in £1 and getting £6 back, then there's no reason why you can't just spend, as long as it stays that way, there's no reason why you can't just keep putting more money into it. You need to keep an eye on your review your ad extensions, make sure that, you know, you've always got the best ones, the most relevant ones. You can check performance on ad extensions and see if you can maybe reword them, get them to work better. Experiments are a really good way. You'll get, you know, it's a good way to test if you want to change something, particularly things like bidding strategies. Then you'll want to be conducting experiments to sort of see how it performs and compare the sort of your existing campaign with the new sort of test option, if you like, and run those side by side and see if there's an improvement, if there's enough of improvement, you can swap over to the new type. And so that's something that you need to be thinking about. Maybe you wouldn't always be running experiments all the time, but it's something that you need to have in the back of your mind at all times to try and see where you can make improvements. And you need, I mean, I can't stress enough that you have to schedule it. So many people just kind of forget that life gets ahead of them, business gets ahead of them, they're busy running the business. And then all of a sudden they realize that they haven't logged into their Google accounts for 2 months. And then they go in and it's like, oh my God, it's just a mess. So schedule it, add it to a calendar, add it to your alerts on your phone, or just anywhere, but schedule it and set yourself reminders. Some stuff we'll need to do daily, some weekly, some monthly, but just make sure you schedule it in and go in and do it. Otherwise, potentially you could be wasting so much money by just letting things run. Yeah, I just can't stress that enough. You need to make sure that you get it in the schedule, get it in your diary, and keep on top of it. That's, you know, probably the most important thing. I do want to look at some key trends. So that's kind of covered the sort of the main body of the webinar, and we're talking about, you know, how you want to move into 2020 with your PPC and how to get the most out of it. But we can't kind of not talk about what's coming for 2020, what we need to think about. And as I hinted just now. For Google, it's all about smart. So smart bidding options, smart campaigns. We've got smart shopping, we've got smart display. You know, they're pushing it. So every, you know, new advertisers, all the default options are set to being this smart sort of black box option. And the machine is really, really good. And, you know, they have a lot more data than we do. So if you've got a campaign set to smart bidding, say target ROAS or target CPA, you know, all we can see is the clicks, what it cost us, how many conversions we had, what, you know, what revenue it was, and that's and sort of where they were, what device they were on, and that's what, probably less than 2 handfuls of data that we can see. Google, when it's setting a bid, if it's on smart bidding, can see millions of data points. I mean, they know everything. They know where the person is, they know what device they're on, they know whether they bought, you know, what their previous history of online behavior is, they know what the weather is, they know all this stuff. So, you know, it's very likely in the future that we will have less and less control over things. I mean, it's moving that way, but at the moment we still can kind of control stuff. But it's very important that you don't bury your head in the sand and just think, no, I'm just going to ignore it, because most of the time when I have tested in the past, a well-managed campaign, manually managed campaign, you can usually do better long-term than the smart bidding, but that is going to change at some point. So it's something that we constantly need to be checking on and looking at. You know, we need to test enhanced CPC at the very minimum. That's the sort of the entry-level smart bidding. And you know, we can use, as I mentioned before, we can use these experiments in our ad account to test these things and see what works. But you have to be aware of it, and you have to make sure that you are thinking about what's going to work for you. And if you want to have all smart campaigns, that's fine, but just be aware that even though it's smart, you still can't just leave it to it, because very often it will kind of take a nosedive, and if you're not watching it, you can end up losing a lot of money or wasting a lot of money and not getting much back for it. So that's my only kind of, I wouldn't say it's a word of warning, but you know, just need to be aware and think about how you want to embrace and how to make the most of this smart technology, by kind of having you and the smart technology working together rather than just handing over control completely. That's my kind of bit of advice on that anyway. So before we finish, just want you to have a kind of a think of based on what I've gone through now in the last hour or so, think about what are the top 3 things that you need to sort of work on or update or change or even build in your ad account in order to get to where you want to be for those 2020 goals. You know, is it sorting out your shopping campaigns? Is it optimizing your feed? Is it testing out some BSA campaigns? Just take 5 minutes and write down those 3 things that you think are going to make the most difference to you to get started, and then get started and start, you know, making headway so that you can really grow in 2020. And, you know, have a think about what, you know, did you learn? Hopefully you learned something. Has it made you think anything, you know, has it made you think about anything in a different way? If you've got any, you know, if there's any things that you kind of want to share, any ideas, any insights that this might maybe have sort of brought to light, then, you know, please comment and share, and you know, start a discussion, because I really want to I really want to kind of get this covered with you. So everything we've covered, yeah, it's quite a lot for an hour and 10 minutes. So hopefully you've got a lot out of that. For those of you that are still here, it's well worth, when it comes to Google Ads, you might know it's good to know where you want to go, but it's also good to know where you are right now and at what level and what sort of, where your campaigns are now, so that you can see where you need to improve. So I would highly recommend this bit.ly link here, bit.ly/2NK2HW4. That will take you to a page where you can download my Google Ads audit checklist. It's specifically for e-commerce businesses. It goes through everything that you need to have in place. Basically, if I were doing an audit, it essentially goes through everything that I would look at to do an audit for an account, to see kind of where the state, what state it's in now, so that you can see where you need to improve. So head off and download that, and that you should find that really valuable as a kind of a benchmark to see where everything is at the moment. If you need help, I mean, you know, I've covered a lot in this. I've covered a lot in this hour and 10 minutes, as I said. If you want help to get any of this done, then please reach out. I'd love to talk to you. We can, you know, you might just want to get some clarity on what the best next steps are for you. Or you might, you know, you might actually want some help to actually get this done and get it implemented in your business, because the sooner you get all this stuff set up properly, then the sooner you can start seeing the results and start seeing the growth that you want to aim for the rest of the year. So please reach out. My number's on the screen there, or you can book a sort of a strategy session where we can go over, you know, sort of spend 20 minutes, half an hour going over where you're at now, what your ad account looks like. You can go to the booking page there, that bookme.name/Sarah Jones, and that will allow you to book a 30-minute strategy session with me. And then we can just, you know, there's no obligation. We can chat about where you are, chat about what you want to achieve, and see if see what you need to do to get there, and see if there's anything I can do to help that happen, basically. So do reach out. I look forward to talking to you. And if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below the video. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to hit the notification button so that you get notified when I post a new video. But thank you for your time, and thank you for listening, and I hope you've got plenty of value out of this webinar, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care now. Bye.